Hey everyone, welcome back to Fantasy Theory. Episode 4 of Marvel's What If came out, and it's titled What If Iron Man Crashed into the Grandmaster. This episode was very Mad Max and pod racing inspired, and I loved it. Let's jump into this episode, break it down, and look at Easter eggs you may have missed. This episode technically starts with a previously on, and we see some of the events of the last episode of Season 1 play out with that version of Gamora. Not sure if it was rumored or confirmed, but this episode was originally supposed to be in Season 1, and that would explain why Gamora is in the final episode of Season 1. I believe it was a rumor or confirmed. There was some issues that they had, so they pushed it to Season 2, which is fine to me. I find it interesting. The title is what it is because the subplot of it features Gamora, and the main characters of the episode is Iron Man, the Grandmaster, and Korg. So maybe they reworked this episode to fit more into Season 2. Like, I'm not crazy, but I thought this episode was like, what if Gamora killed Thanos or something like that? Or what if Gamora saved half the universe? The Watcher explains her story began in someone else's, so it really goes to prove more that this was somewhat changed from Season 1. The clips used in the beginning of this episode previously was not in the last season and was new edited footage. I feel as if it replicates the first Avengers movie when we get the shot of all 6 Avengers. You know the shot. The actual episode begins with Iron Man in the events of Avengers 1, where he redirects the atomic bomb to the Chitauri mothership. However, this is where things start to change up. Instead of falling back into Earth, the portal closes and he's stuck outside of Earth's realm and doesn't come back, just like in Avengers 1. If you've seen Thor Ragnarok, this part of the episode is very reminiscent of it, where he gets the weird, trippy, colorful world hopping scene. This is how Thor ends up on the Grandmaster's planet Sakaar, and Tony will do the same. Tony crashes into the Grandmaster's palace, and the Grandmaster is delighted to see him. If the voice of the Grandmaster sounds familiar to you, that's because it's voiced by Jeff Goldblum. Always a treat to hear and see him. We also see Topaz, who was voiced by the original actress from Ragnarok, Rachel House. It's always nice when people reprise their roles, even when it's just the voice of their character. The Grandmaster calls him Senor Porcelana, which I assume is a compliment because he was loving Tony's face and skin, so maybe it's like him saying his face is so clear because Porcelana is a face cream. Maybe I'm too crazy on it. While Tony's suit starts to spark, they use the foam cannon to extinguish it. They probably have the foam cannon for all the crash cards and the races that the Grandmaster just loves so much. Tony is shocked to hear that he is on another planet and references the phrase, "I'm lost in space." Now, this is before Endgame in this timeline, so Tony has never been to another planet, so this is all news to him. Imagine the mental stress after being told you fell onto another planet in another galaxy. Yikes. So the Grandmaster then recognizes Iron Man and says time works differently here. Somehow he pulls up a screen of the encounter Tony just had with the rocket. I assume it's this Tony and not another Tony because he references how time works differently here, but it's very possible this is another Tony because he calls him the defeater of Thanos, and Tony hilariously responds, "Who?" He calls him Tin Man, Rocket Man, and Mojo Man, and throughout the episode we'll never actually call him by his real name, Iron Man. Tony calls him the Wizard of Oz, maybe a jab back after being called Tin Man because those are both characters from the popular movie The Wizard of Oz. The Grandmaster tells Tony he has to stay for his 21st birthday, and Tony says he's put his party days behind him. So this Tony must have been a party animal like Earth 616, and he eventually grew out of partying and settles down with Pepper, judging by how he sees Pepper on the computer screen, and he's relieved that she is okay. Next scene, we see some of the gladiators who are believed to be people who are in Ragnarok. There's tons of unique vehicles in this race, and then we get a shot of Valkyrie and her vehicle. The vehicle I've seen many people point out looks like Thor's helmet from Love and Thunder. We also introduced the Korg, who is always a treat to have on screen. I believe he is voiced by Taika Waititi in this as well. Tony calls this race a Formula 1 race, which is a reference to Iron Man 2 when we saw him in the race before facing off against Whiplash. We get a gist of how crazy the Grandmaster is because he was upset that he couldn't feel the flames from one of the crashed gladiators. But it's Jeff Goldblum, so we can't really stay mad at him. Valkyrie eventually loses the race and the crowd starts to throw tin cans and of course chinchillas at her. The Grandmaster then sugarcoats why they don't throw food anymore because of a famine that is most likely because of his selfish leadership. Valkyrie grabs a drink from a gladiator, and I noticed that it's the same brand of drink she drinks in Ragnarok, so she stayed loyal to that type of alcohol. The Grandmaster calls for his current champion, who is the champion perhaps right before the Hulk, and maybe even the Hulk and the Elephant champion faced off in the MCU timeline, with Hulk ultimately winning and becoming the new champ. Tony suits up just like how the Mark 42 armor we saw in Iron Man 3, where different parts of the suit fly to him. Tony's suit malfunctions and he meets Korg, whom he calls Mount Rushmore because, well, a rock base with a face just like the United States president's faces in the rocks. Even in this universe, Tony is still quick with it. We are finally introduced to the Gamora who is hunting down Tony for his crimes against Thanos. You see why I'm starting to think this episode got flipped, turned upside down, and changed up. Before she can get Tony, she is tased by the small disc, just like how Thor was in Ragnarok. Tony is also tased with this. Tony is able to get the taser off of him with his arc reactor, that of which isn't removed until Iron Man 3. While escaping, Tony blinks, and that's that's enough of a signal for Korg to go crazy and take out all the guards. Another display, just like the first episode of Korg's power. Gamora gets free from the cell and uses the same gun Loki and Thor uses in Ragnarok to escape. Tony lectures her and asks her if she's ever experienced a home world be brought to their knees by a madman. And well, she doesn't say anything, but we know from Infinity War that yes, she does know what it's like, because that same madman did the same thing to her world. After some recruiting of Valkyrie and Korg, Tony builds another Iron Man suit from what I assume is a box of nice scraps, and then challenges the Grandmaster to a race. Winner gets the planet as well as the Iron Man suit. Weird trade-off, but I'll take it because the suit is pretty cool. The Grandmaster pulls up in the race in a red and gold vehicle, the Iron Man colors, perhaps as a mental type of mind game, and then they are off to the races. Few things in the race. Korg absolutely destroys a vehicle that makes almost like a space blaster sound. The Grandmaster is obviously cheating in this race, and that was expected, putting obstacles and even more elephant champions on the track. They go down a road from a weird robot-looking statue, and let me say, it kind of got my stomach bubbling with how steep that was. Gamora ends up helping Tony after his suit turns into a vehicle, and Tony ends up winning the race. Valkyrie saves Tony from Topaz, and then in the process melts the Grandmaster. Also, after this, Valkyrie is crowned king after the win, which is another moment in the MCU she is crowned king of a group of people. Later in the episode, we see a double-cross team-up of Tony and Gamora hitting Thanos with the melt stick, and this is actually where the last episode of Season 1 picks up. And of course, this episode introduces the first post-credit scene of the season, which I assume is just a funny joke, but I wonder if it will come into play later. Anyway, this episode was a ton of fun to talk about. It's been great to break down episode 4, and I'm so excited to break down the next episode, and then the next episode, and just keep going on until we don't have any more, because of course these come out every day until the 30th. Anyway, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching today's video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Have an incredible day.